It was late afternoon, and the sun cast golden streaks through the trees of Fairview Park, bathing the lively scene in warm light. The air buzzed with energy, children raced each other on swings, joggers floated effortlessly along winding trails, and couples leaned in close, sharing whispers on the benches. Jamir, a 16-year-old high school junior, trudged along the gravel path, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He wasn't there to revel in the park's beauty. For him, it was simply the quickest route to pick up groceries for his mother. As he moved briskly through the park, something unusual snagged his attention. A weathered wooden bench near the playground held a small, tan leather purse. It seemed out of place, almost abandoned, as though it had been left in haste. Jamir hesitated. His instincts whispered to keep walking. This wasn't his problem, but an inexplicable pull, maybe curiosity or a deep-seated sense of justice, slowed his steps. He glanced around. No one seemed to notice the purse, let alone claim it. Jamir approached cautiously, his sneakers crunching against the gravel. The purse was light in his hands, its corners scuffed and worn. His pulse quickened as he unzipped the main compartment. Inside, a wallet, a set of keys, and a folded receipt lay neatly arranged. A driver's license peeked out from the wallet's edge, revealing the image of a middle-aged woman with soft blonde hair and kind eyes. Linda Carson. Her name and address stared back at him. Jamir surveyed the park once more. Still, no one appeared to be searching for a missing purse. He sighed, a heavy breath filled with resolve. Leaving it there didn't feel right. Tucking it into his backpack, Jamir made up his mind to return it. Yet, as he walked the rest of the way home, the weight on his shoulders felt heavier than the purse itself. Back in the modest kitchen of his family's home, Jamir placed the purse on the small dining table. His younger sister, Tasha, leaned in with wide eyes, her curiosity barely restrained. "Did you find that? Is it full of money?" she asked, her voice bursting with excitement. Jamir shook his head, pulling out the wallet to show her. "No, it belongs to someone. Linda Carson. Look, her ID's right here." Tasha wrinkled her nose, unimpressed. "So, what are you going to do with it?" "Return it," Jamir replied firmly. The words, though simple, carried a weight that even he didn't fully understand. Their mother, tired from her shift but always attentive, glanced over while wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You're doing the right thing, Jamir," she said, her tone steady but cautious. "Just be careful. Not everyone trusts strangers knocking on their door, especially not nowadays." Jamir nodded, her unspoken warnings clear. Still, he couldn't ignore the thought that Linda Carson might be frantic, worrying over her lost purse. The next morning, Jamir double-checked the address on the ID before hopping onto his bike. The crisp autumn air nipped at his face as he pedaled through the neighborhood. His nerves tightened with every push of the pedals. What if she thought he stole it? What if she accused him instead of thanking him? Doubt crept into his mind, but he pushed forward, determined. When he finally reached the house, a modest brick home with a porch swing that swayed gently in the breeze, Jamir paused to steady himself. The purse felt heavier than ever in his hand as he rang the doorbell. The sound of hurried footsteps grew louder until the door swung open, revealing Linda Carson herself. Her expression shifted rapidly, first suspicion, then relief, and finally, an overwhelming gratitude. "Oh my goodness," she breathed, her voice trembling with emotion. "You have no idea how worried I've been." Jamir extended the purse toward her. "I found it at the park," he explained, his tone calm. "I figured you'd want it back." Linda's hands shook slightly as she took the purse, her fingers quickly checking its contents. Her eyes welled with tears as she looked up at Jamir. "Everything's here," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You didn't take anything?" "No, ma'am," Jamir replied earnestly. "I just wanted to make sure it got back to you." Linda's gaze lingered on him for a moment before a genuine smile lit her face. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice full of sincerity. "Thank you so much." She stepped aside and gestured toward the doorway. "Please, at least let me get you something to drink. You've gone out of your way to do this." Jamir hesitated, glancing back at his bike parked near the sidewalk. "I'm okay, really. I just wanted to make sure you got it back." But Linda was insistent. "I won't take no for an answer. Just a moment of your time." Reluctantly, Jamir followed her inside. The house was cozy and inviting, with the warm scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with subtle hints of lavender. Linda motioned for him to sit at the small kitchen table. He complied, feeling slightly out of place as he awkwardly rested his hands on the table's edge. Moments later, Linda returned with a glass of lemonade and a small plate of cookies. "Here," she said, placing them in front of him. "It's the least I can do." As Jamir sipped the lemonade, Linda settled across from him, her fingers nervously tracing the edges of the purse. "I was convinced it was gone forever," she admitted, her voice trembling with the memory. "My whole life is in here, my ID, my cards, even a picture of my husband." Her voice softened, her eyes fixed on a photograph inside the purse. "He passed away a few years ago. I carry his picture with me everywhere I go." When I realized the purse was missing, her voice trailed off, and she pressed her lips together, trying to hold back tears. Jamir shifted in his seat, feeling a mix of discomfort and empathy. "I'm sorry about your husband," he said quietly. Linda offered a faint smile, dabbing at the corner of her eye. "You've done more than you know, Jamir." She reached into the purse and pulled out a crisp $20 bill. "I want to give you something for your trouble." Jamir's hands shot up in protest. "No, ma'am. I can't take that. I didn't do it for money." "But you deserve it," she insisted, holding the bill out toward him. Jamir shook his head firmly. "My mom always says we should do the right thing, no matter what. Jamir studied Linda for a moment, her calm demeanor shifting into something softer, admiration tinged with purpose. Her lips curved into a thoughtful smile as she carefully tucked the bill back into her purse. "Then maybe," she began, her voice quiet yet deliberate, "there's another way I can help you." Jamir blinked, uncertainty flickering across his face. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone tinged with both curiosity and skepticism. Linda didn't answer immediately. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, her eyes scanning him as though he were a puzzle with missing pieces. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze lingering. "Tell me, Jamir, do you live around here?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied, nodding. "Just a few blocks over." Linda nodded, her fingers tapping a light rhythm against the edge of the table. "In school? What grade are you in?" "I'm a junior at Riverdale High," he said, his voice steady but tinged with a touch of modesty. "It's okay, I guess. I've been thinking about college, but, well, it's not easy." Her brows lifted, and her expression brightened ever so slightly. "College? That's wonderful. What do you want to study?" He hesitated, his fingers tracing the rim of the glass in front of him as though the motion might help him find the right words. "Engineering," he finally said. "I like building things, figuring out how stuff works. But my mom's already working 2 jobs, and college is expensive." A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Linda's expression softened, a tender smile gracing her lips. "You remind me of my son," she said, her voice low but carrying a weight of emotion. "Your son?" Jamir echoed, his tone tentative. She nodded, her gaze drifting toward a framed photo sitting on the mantel in the adjacent living room. Jamir followed her eyes, spotting the image of a young man in a cap and gown. "His name was Kyle," Linda explained, her voice tinged with both pride and sorrow. "He passed away in a car accident 5 years ago. He was bright, just like you, always had big dreams. He wanted to be an architect." Jamir shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unsure of how to respond to something so personal. Finally, he managed a quiet, "I'm sorry." Linda smiled gently, though her eyes glistened with tears she refused to shed. "Thank you. When you lose someone like that, it changes how you see the world. I try to honor Kyle by helping people when I can. And you, Jamir, you've reminded me there's still so much good out there." Jamir felt a flush creep up his cheeks, embarrassed by her praise. "I just did what anyone should do," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "No," Linda said firmly, shaking her head. "Not everyone would have done what you did. It's rare to meet someone who chooses kindness when they don't have to. That's why I want to help you. I know some people who care about education, who might be able to make your dream of college a little more attainable." Jamir's eyes widened in surprise. "You don't have to do that," he stammered. "I mean, you don't even know me." "I know enough," Linda replied with a warm smile. "And besides, it's not about what I have to do, it's about what I want to do." For the first time in what felt like forever, Jamir allowed himself to imagine a future where college wasn't just a far-off dream but a tangible goal within his reach. The following day, Linda put her plan into motion. She spent the morning making calls, reaching out to friends, former colleagues, and members of local community groups. She'd always been active in Dayton's civic programs, but now her mission felt deeply personal. She started with Mr. Reynolds, the director of a nonprofit organization that provided scholarships for underprivileged youth. When Linda explained Jamir's story, Mr. Reynolds didn't hesitate. "A young man with that kind of integrity deserves a chance," he said. "Have him stop by our office next week, and we'll see what we can do." Next, Linda called her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, a retired teacher who ran a tutoring program. "If he's aiming for engineering," Mrs. Henderson said thoughtfully, "he'll need strong math and science skills. I'd be happy to work with him." By the end of the day, Linda had lined up an array of opportunities, scholarship applications, free tutoring sessions, and even a summer internship with a local architect. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so inspired. Meanwhile, Jamir was blissfully unaware of the plans unfolding behind the scenes. He spent his weekend helping his mom tidy the house and playing video games with his friend Tasha, doing his best not to dwell too much on Linda's promises. Part of him didn't want to get his hopes up. But when Linda called on Monday evening, her voice was bright with excitement. "Jamir," she said, "can you stop by my house tomorrow? I've got some people I'd like you to meet." Curious, and more than a little nervous, Jamir agreed. The next afternoon, he found himself seated in Linda's living room, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. Yet, every person in the room radiated warmth and eagerness to help. "Jamir, this is Mr. Reynolds," Linda said, gesturing toward the man seated to her left. "He runs a scholarship program and wants to help with your college applications." Mr. Reynolds extended a hand, his smile kind and reassuring. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Jamir," he said. "From what Linda's told me, you've got a bright future ahead of you. Let's make sure you have the tools to reach it." Jamir's mouth fell open slightly as he shook Mr. Reynolds' hand, gratitude and disbelief warring within him. "Thank you, sir," he said softly, his voice laced with sincerity. Linda turned to a smiling woman beside her. "And this is Mrs. Henderson. She's a retired teacher and an expert in math and science." Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Linda tells me you're interested in engineering. If you're willing, I'd love to help you sharpen your skills and prepare for college-level work." Jamir struggled to process everything unfolding before him. His voice trembled as he said, This is amazing. I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," Linda said simply. Over the following weeks, Jamir's life transformed in ways he'd never thought possible. After school, Jamir found himself diving into a world of numbers and equations at Mrs. Henderson's dining table. The once intimidating landscape of math and engineering gradually unfolded under her patient guidance. She had a knack for making even the most challenging problems feel like puzzles waiting to be solved, and with each session, Jamir's confidence grew. At the same time, Linda stood steadfast beside him, accompanying him to Mr. Reynolds' office. Together, they painstakingly worked on scholarship applications, crafting essays that painted a vivid picture of Jamir's dedication and his dreams of becoming an engineer. For the first time in his life, the future didn't feel like a distant, unreachable horizon, it felt tangible, almost within arm's reach. One evening, Linda extended an invitation to dinner, welcoming Jamir and his mother into her warm, welcoming kitchen. As they sat around the table, Linda spoke earnestly about the progress Jamir was making. "Your son is incredible," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "He's smart, kind, and determined. I have no doubt he's going to do great things." Jamir's mother, visibly moved, wiped away a tear. "I always knew he had it in him," she whispered, her voice tinged with both pride and exhaustion. "But it's hard, you know? Raising kids alone, working all the time, it feels like you can't give them everything they deserve." Linda reached out, taking her hand in a comforting gesture. "You've done an amazing job. Jamir is who he is because of you. I'm just lucky to be a small part of his journey." As the weeks melted into months, Jamir's hard work began to bear fruit. One fateful afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. The envelope felt heavier than usual, its contents pulsating with promise. With trembling hands, Jamir tore it open, scanning the first few lines. His breath caught. "We are pleased to inform you He read the words again, disbelief mingling with joy. It was a full scholarship to study engineering at Ohio State University. Overwhelmed, Jamir raced to find his mother, waving the letter triumphantly in the air. "Mom! Mom! I got it!" he cried, his voice cracking with excitement. She enveloped him in a fierce hug, her laughter and tears blending into one expression of pure joy. That evening, Jamir made his way to Linda's house, clutching the letter tightly in his hand. As she opened the door, he thrust the paper toward her, his voice thick with gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said. Linda's eyes shimmered with pride as she hugged him. "No, Jamir. You earned this. I just opened the door, you're the one who walked through it." But Jamir's journey didn't stop there. His story became a beacon of hope for the entire community. Linda often shared his tale with friends and neighbors, emphasizing how one small act of honesty had set everything in motion. At a town hall meeting, she recounted the day Jamir returned her purse. "It's not just about what Jamir did for me," she told the crowd, her voice resonating with conviction. "It's about what we can do for each other, choosing kindness over doubt, action over indifference." Her words struck a chord. People were inspired to act. Donations poured into scholarship funds, volunteers signed up to mentor students, and local businesses created internships for teens like Jamir, eager to carve out brighter futures. For Jamir, the attention was humbling. He spoke at community events, sharing his journey and encouraging others to dream big. "It's not about where you start," he would say, his voice steady and sure. "It's about what you're willing to do to get where you want to go, and the people who help you along the way." Linda, too, found her life transformed. Helping Jamir had filled a void she hadn't even realized existed, offering her a renewed sense of purpose and healing wounds she thought would never mend. On a sunny spring afternoon, as Jamir prepared to leave for his first semester at Ohio State, he made one last stop at Linda's house. She greeted him with a warm hug and a care package filled with snacks, notebooks, and a framed photo of the two of them, taken the day he received his scholarship letter. "Thank you, Miss Carson," Jamir said, his voice sincere. "For everything." Linda's reply was soft but resolute. "No, Jamir. Thank you. You reminded me that the world is still full of good people and that we all have the power to make it a little brighter." As Jamir walked down the street, his figure disappearing into the distance, Linda watched with a smile. She knew she had played a small but meaningful part in his incredible journey. In her heart, she understood that the best stories in life weren't just about what had happened but about the doors they opened for what was yet to come. Jamir's story stands as a testament to the transformative power of kindness and integrity. A simple decision to return a lost purse didn't just change his life, it sparked a chain reaction of hope and possibility that uplifted an entire community. It's a powerful reminder that even the smallest actions can create ripples of impact and that when we lift each other up, we all rise together.